This is the Kia EV5 and it's a really important car for Kia. It sits at the sweet spot of the electric vehicle market. It's a medium SUV. It's an electric one. It looks conventional like a regular SUV, and this is probably the car that you're considering if you're looking at moving from a medium petrol SUV, perhaps the Toyota RAV4, into something electric. This is the Air model. It's about $56,000 drive away, and this car will get you around about 400 kilometers, probably a little bit less than that, but that's the claim. So let's have a deep dive at the EV5. This may well be on your shortlist, and I'll let you know exactly what we think. The tricky thing for the EV5 is where it lands. It's not cheap enough to be a no-brainer, and it's not premium enough to feel like a luxury buy. So buyers naturally start comparing it to everything: Tesla Model Y, BYD Sea Lion 7, and even Kia's own EV3. In terms of the boot space, the Model Y bests it on luggage capacity. That thing is enormous in the back, but there's plenty of room here too, and there's some nice clever features as well, which makes this a very usable space. First of all, we've got this raised boot floor here, which is in two sections, so we can lift that bit there. And we've got space here for hiding gear out of the way. But you can also move this rear spot out the way too, and you've got additional storage there. Obviously here we've got the tyre mobility kit, which is what you have in place of a spare wheel. So you should be mindful of that. You're not getting a spare wheel on the EV5. The other thing that we've got are these hooks, which can be used as tie downs and then configurable. So they just twist out, and then we can move them around. So if there's gear that you want to secure so it doesn't slide around in the boot. One of the criticisms we've got of this space is that we've noticed, even though this car hasn't got very many kilometers on it, it is already showing some signs of kind of wear through this hard plastics, and it's not something that we've seen in other Kia models. The other function that we're missing out on here is the operation of folding those second rows from the rear. We are able to do that in other vehicles, but in this case we're going to have to go round to actually fold those seats forward. Not a big deal, but sometimes it can be quite handy just to have a button here that folds them flat. But let's take a look at that operation. So the way that we do that is there's a lever on the side of the seats. We pull it up and the seat folds forwards. We have got this nice flat loading area here. But one thing I've noticed as well is that the seat's pretty heavy to maneuver back into space. Now we do have a bit of a recline on this rear seat base as well, which is quite nice. Does make it a little bit more of a comfortable option for people that are traveling in the rear. And in terms of space, well, let's get in and have a look. Loads of leg room here. That's where my driver's seat usually sits. I've got this cool storage feature down here as well, which is big enough for a bottle. In some of the higher spec models, this is chilled and it will warm items as well. This one's just really for storage, but it's a nice long box and definitely something you could pop maybe a water bottle in there. We've also got storage here in the form of the mat pockets, and there's two USB-C charge ports, one in either door, so the kids aren't going to argue about the chargers. In terms of vents, there's a few options. So there's a vent that sits underneath the driver and the passenger seat, so which will start the airflow. And then there's also these B-pillar mounted ones as well. The interior, as this is the entry model, it's basic in terms of the colorways. It's basic black. We have got this nice light headliner here too, but the trim is really quite attractive. We've got this fabric trim on the edge of this synthetic leather, and I think it's a really nice finish. It obviously carries on up front, but let's have a look at the front seat. And in the cabin, everything is nice and conventional. It's got these two 12.3-inch screens that sit across the dash. We've got heating controls here. We've got these touch capacitive buttons here too. There's USB chargers, there's cup holders. It's just a really conventional layout for the SUV buyer, and something that I think a lot of buyers will actually really appreciate. It doesn't feel like you've jumped into a spaceship. And in terms of space, because this is an EV, we've got this great use of space through here where I've got a storage for my phone, I've got cup holders here, and there's additional storage under here if I want to pop a small bag or something like that. The gear shift has been relocated, so it sits here on a stalk next to the indicator stalk with the light control, and then we've got the conventional windscreen washers over here. So all in all, it's feeling very much like a conventional car, albeit with a shifter in a slightly odd space. Anybody that's thinking, well, I don't want to jump into an electric car if it's just going to baffle me with technology, this could be the car for you. It really is very straightforward and easy to understand. You can see this big armrest here, which is sitting here. It's actually a really comfortable spot for the driver, and particularly somebody of my stature. Sometimes they can be quite far back depending on how far you've got your car seat forward. So this is in a good spot. There's also a really cool feature here. So come have a look at this. If I wanted to, there's a little pocket here. So you'll see that the passenger seat extends out across the middle of the car, and there's a little pocket here. So if I wanted to stash my phone out of sight so I don't get tempted to have a quick look at it, then it sits nicely in there. One thing that is worth mentioning is that there is no wireless phone charger in this car. You only get that if you step all the way up to the GT line model, which is a bit of a disappointment. But while there's no wireless phone charging in this model, we do have wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. So if you're familiar with that technology in your existing car, you'll be pretty familiar with it in the EV5 as well. It's also missing out on some fairly critical technology like a 360-degree camera, which is really, really helpful when you're navigating and parking in a tight spot. There's also no sunroof. Now, a lot of newer manufacturers are making sunroof standards across their ranges. But one thing the car does have is onboard satellite navigation, which is using the connected car technologies. So not a feature that you get on everything. People are pretty reliant on assuming that you're going to have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto to get your navigation sorted out. And particularly at the entry model, to have embedded navigation is a really nice feature. So it doesn't miss out on everything. This car has Kia Connect, so it's got a function like a calendar. It'll tell you the weather as well. And then you can use the app to perform various different functions as well once you've got connected. One thing that I think will appeal to buyers considering the EV5 is that this is not particularly performance-focused model. It doesn't need to be. It's still got that instant acceleration and torque from takeoff that you get from an electric motor, but it's not blisteringly quick, and honestly it doesn't need to be. Like any medium SUV, the EV5's got a nice footprint too, so it's got that space on the interior, but it's not overly large, so it doesn't feel like you're hauling a big vehicle around. In terms of the ride, it is quite a hard ride. The team at Kia have done some localization work to tune this car for Australian roads. It's definitely better on an open road. Driving through the city, it's a little bit harder, and you can definitely pick up some of the bumps. The tyre as well I've found quite noisy. This one rides on a Kumo EV tyre, and it's probably not as quiet as something like a nice plush Continental, and I think that possibly speaks to the price or the fact that the Koreans do tend to favour the Kumo product. But overall, it's not a bad ride. It's not as plush and swooshing as the Model Y, but it's arguably equips itself just as well as the C-Line 7. That definitely does have some compromises in the way that it rides, even though it does have performance going for it over this car, and obviously all of that technology and the inclusion of all the infotainment bits and pieces. One small thing worth flagging is charging, particularly on this standard range model. It seems fine on public fast chargers, but at home it's really quite slow. It charges as standard as a 6 amp rate, so you're going to need to select the 10 amp rate to get it to charge a little bit quicker. And this may be where you'll benefit from a proper wall charger if you want to make things a little bit easy. This does have a claimed range of only 400 kilometers, so you will be charging it very frequently. So the Kia EV5 does have a lot to interest buyers, particularly if you're of the type that wants something really conventional that you can just jump straight into out of your old petrol SUV. It doesn't have the technology, the full self-driving possibility of something like the Tesla Model Y, and it doesn't have the pizzazz and the showiness of the BYD C-Line 7. However, it does have some things which will be very familiar to buyers. It's got this known brand name, which stands for something, as well as an extensive dealer network, so you know that you're going to be able to have any service or warranty issues dealt with. And the EV5, well, there are some options in the range. This one here is the Air, which is the most affordable, but you do get the option to move all the way through to the GT line, which is a little bit exy, but it does have a lot of those features which are missing in this car. But overall, what do I think of the EV5? Well, I reckon it's an electric SUV that plays it pretty safe. And for a lot of buyers, there's not a lot of risk in jumping into this car. You may want to step up into one of the higher grade models if you want that longer range battery. But at this price point, I reckon for buyers looking to play it pretty safe with their first electric SUV, you're not going to go far wrong.
If you're looking for your next car, you can research and compare running costs, features and specs, and view loan options at RACV CarMatch.